The Cats Rex and Indigo. Nights had become cool like the flesh of the year's last cantaloupe. The city had become a seedless affair, a free place, where the people were working on posture and giving one another love, like that was the mission. The cats preceded their organization, a lot of relaxing from sunrise to sunset, then running about as their owners relaxed after the day's routine. The two cats were Rex, the orange tabby, and Indigo, the slim Russian blue. They lived on either side of a gap between buildings on Franklin and Main. At their windows, they could see one another in the moonlight, while their humans rested under the quilts and comforters, recently unpacked in preparation for fall. Rex's keeper was occupied steadily, Monday through Friday, then slept 18 hours on the weekends. Rex's keeper was occupied steadily. Rex waited for the night to come, licking himself, messing litter, sitting on his keeper's head at night to make sure no other cat would come. Rex's parent fell asleep with a smidgen of mustard on the corner of his mouth. Indigo's mother was up until 11 then fell asleep after chamomile tea poured and sipped through a traditional tea set she used regularly and planned on using with her husband one day, when he was done being single forever in some capital city she dreamed of. While their parents were occupied by affairs of slumber, the two cats had begun to communicate with their glowing eyes over the gap between the buildings. They swished their tails. They tapped the windows. The two cats imagined in the darkness of their rooms their frolicking was jointly experienced. Soon they arranged with the moon to have an adventure. The moon commissioned a nine-eyed monster to stretch its long pool stick up to retrieve the cats from the windows, for these cats were brave when they wanted to be, though they had to want to leave the apartments, otherwise they were fussy. The queue of the pool stick was raised to the window. Rex crawled down from the 5th floor using the stick until he hopped off the pool stick and stood by the dumpster. He watched the nine-eyed monster extend the pool stick to the window where Indigo had been communicating with him. The monster, carefully handling the long pool stick, used it like it was a hook to raise shutters. And Indigo slinked out through a carefully gnawed hole in the screen that would not be found for days afterward, since her keeper was so busy and would forget to shut the window for days until a bug flew through the curtain in the cooling air. Soon as Indigo prowled down the fat end of the pool stick, the two cats swirled around one another, and their joy was shared by the traditional blending of oils. They scurried up Federal Street and into the alley where they could meow and caterwaul until they accepted they had left their safe places to live with daring do. Soon they were excited. Rex found Indigo so assertive and mysterious, and in body she was energetic, gamboling around him, her eyes a jade green, while the whiskers on Rex's face twitched. They licked one another several times and knew they'd never forget this night of freedom. The streets were scarce of people with agendas. They darted to the common, where there was the troupe inspired by Carlos Santana's music to look out for the dreams of children. They were waiting around to be of service, standing on their tiptoes like ballerinas and ballerines. They spoke and jib-jabbed, calling one another by name, excited by the simple things in life. "Look, two kitties," exclaimed a man under a bull's hat. A woman with a star on her face called the cats over. Indigo stared at her, alert, saucers for eyes. Rex wandered closer, meowing. There was the smell of cinnamon. The cats walked around some ankles, exchanged oils, then they continued to speed about from one resting place to another, by the big tree, beside the bank, up the hill, past the crowd outside the bar. They made it past the fashion store to the parking lot adjacent to the church. Over the painted lines, the birds were flying cars. The cats meowed. Down the road, Elm Street, they saw the Worcester Club. Outside, yellow fire hydrants were taking pensive, solitary strolls. Inside, there were skeletons who were drinking and coughing up cursed music that started in the 17th century. Purple eyebrows were hanging like moss in a swamp above the deck, and, in their skeletal claws, the skeletons of the Worcester Club held the souls of big people like they were still small babies. The shrunken children had spent too much time on their cell phones and wandered away from the neighborhoods without good sense or paying attention to the wise homeless watchers or their wise paternal guardians. The patrons of the Worcester Club were only messing with the children in nightmare, though. The children would wake up normal-sized, straighten their backs, and eat bowls of cereal, wondering what went on there. Rex and Indigo crossed the street. They saw a white van. Indigo climbed an elm tree. Rex followed her to the end of a limb. Yellow fire hydrants were extending their solitary walks. They started to follow the two cats. In a window, they saw a blue moon face mask worn by a news reporter who was recording the evening supper had by mice on the grass. There was a bull-headed woman there in a red dress, the wife of a man who was given too much credit. When a hen flew from the coop on the roof and crossed their line of sight, Rex stopped snooping and crawled down the tree. They mocked and joked on cats sitting by windows inside below the moon. Perhaps Indigo and Rex would invite them on their next adventure. Alas, that would have to be on another night, not that night's special adventure. "It's a Saturday," knew a gray-haired boy walking down the street. The birds flying automobiles had parked their cars on roof lots by the time Rex and Indigo had traveled to the park, where the slim crescent moon reflected on the shallow pond in the middle of dark grass and sturdy myriad trees. There were no gods at the park. A man with humongous legs sat on a bench readied for the future of life on Earth. It dreamed up. The future was so high and far, the man's heart was hard, like he was responsible for balancing 9 bowling pins. When the two cats approached him, he was relieved, for he was deathly afraid of other human beings. "They'd ruined my vision," he complained. "Meow," reasoned Rex. "Meow, meow," added Indigo. The man expecting the future of life on Earth did not mind seeing other human beings walking about in the daylight, though he feared their voices. It is a comic tendency that humans have, placing a hello, or that dreaded complex word, as one of the most mind-altering, unsettling, possibility-riddled spells in all of the English language. For without speaking, humans are more like the trees, grass, and taller trees, and taller grass. And when speaking, they are more like the universe within, filled with either calm winds or hot lavas of indication and demand. The anxious man pondered on his heavy feet on the bench. The cats did not get close enough to sit on his lap. But at least they will not use human voices, he thought. No, not that. Meow. Meow. There were quiet, secret meows. I must balance. There was another ruler in another apartment, living below a Brazilian family, who was having a noodle night himself at 2 a.m. He didn't like people named Nazario. The cats went unnoticed by thousands, sleeping in the 3-deckers. A man who had pitched a tent in the forest by Doherty High School was busy with work. Rex and Indigo walked by the water. They went by the playground where there were no children but only ghosts from the synagogue. Then the cats darted toward the market. A stray dog named Spot darted by. He wasn't supposed to be out of his house either, but the animals let each other alone and didn't tattle for being out late. By 2023, dogs and cats aren't the mortal enemies they've been depicted to be in cartoon truth. Rather, cats are often short-tempered with other cats. Rex supported Indigo's decision to start walking home on Highland Street, but began to feel hungry, so he stopped pussyfooting by a yogurt shop where there was a fallen pizza crust by the curb. The moon had given them a curfew. The nine-eyed monster had begun to follow them at a distance to help them inside as soon as they got to their buildings. If they did not get there soon, they would be carried and might caterwaul, scratch, and whine in protest. But those were the rules of their outing as established by the moon that had granted it on that dark night. Sometimes the things we fear help to govern us. My grandpa assures me, even at the age of 31, when I ask questions, that there are reasons for everything, even if people don't like the reasons. A bad feeling or pain can keep us away from making fatal errors, like touching a hot pan with bare skin. That's the nervous system for you. The cats walked home on their padded paws, starting to hurry. College students were powwowing and joking with one another by the store with collectibles and old-fashioned toys. They engineered exquisite physics and jokes and imagined making robots that could carry them into their frat houses. The cats were downtown in an hour. They had a good sense of home. There were not many cars out, so they didn't need to dodge constant traffic. They were lucky enough to find a discarded carton of Oreo ice cream that was being eaten by Jesus earlier in the day when some kind person afforded him a spoon. The cats lowered their mouths in order to lap up delectable gooey dribble remaining in that carton of Oreo ice cream. This was a nice savory to end their moonlit evening together. They went back to the common, which was deserted, save for some birds in the trees who were tired from flying in cars. There was a nightingale who stowed away on a bus from Luxembourg that came to visit the city for the cool night air in September. After a night of adventure, it was time for Rex and Indigo to return inside. Rex looked at Indigo. They meowed to tell each other they loved one another. They purred and rubbed together their oily coats. Then Rex climbed on the shoulders of the nine-eyed monster. He walked up the pool stick, purred thank you to the moon in the night air, and he crawled back to the windowsill, careful not to fall when a gust of wind initiated in the atmospheric night. He walked in the small door in the bricks, closed it inside of the ment. His human was having a nightmare against personalities from the workplace. Rex kept watch at the foot of his bed. The sun would rise soon. Indigo climbed the pool stick and went through the hole in the screen. She found her human was out of bed and sitting in the kitchenette, but she had not noticed Indigo had left and figured the cat might be hiding under the bed. Indigo hid under the clothes on the hangers in an open closet where there was a scarf on the floor that had fallen on Thursday. The two cats saw each other from their windows the next day. Months later, Rex got another cat in his home to play with. They both looked across the gap between the buildings to Indigo's window where she posed at night. Rex and Indigo might go on another outing some night next year, But an adventure like theirs, one had peacefully with a good companion, is adequate even once in a lifetime, and it can never be duplicated, so it must be stored when times are organized otherwise. For animals can fuel millions of good dreams and good night sleeps under the starry blankets of Eden, aka Allah, aka Earth, that old paradise now closer to heaven than ever before. See it for yourself. Tomorrow is a new day for cats and little humans alike who only need to focus on being kind to one another. Just pray for all the nice things in life tonight and let the moon cool in the sky atop the blue neighborhood cake that keeps you sweet. Have you brushed your teeth? Good. Oral hygiene remains important for earthlings, precisely Homo sapiens, the species that invented toothbrushes.